Okay, so President Trump is trying to claim that it's his brilliant negotiating skills that have led to Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and he claims between 7 and 9 total Arab countries may eventually sign on to making peace with Israel. The reality is that most of these Arab countries already had peace with Israel uh, to varying degrees behind the scenes. And this latest overture, especially from Bahrain, is obviously about Iran. And one of the things you got to appreciate about Bahrain is a country that's very close to the United States. U.S. military bases there. Same thing for United Arab Emirates. Same thing will be true of Qatar um, and Saudi Arabia as well. A very close relation with the U.S. for a very, very long time, and sharing intelligence with Israeli intelligence for a very, very long time because they share a lot of the same enemies, namely Shia Islamic groups backed by Iran, like Hezbollah, and also Sunni Islamic extremist groups that actually oppose the royal families and the ruling elites of these Arab Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia. Al Qaeda has been an enemy of Saudi Arabia for quite a while. Islamic State is not a friend to any state on the face of the earth. And anyone who tells you otherwise is simply completely ignorant about that organization and what they stand for. Um, so, what's interesting about Bahrain is this: Bahrain and Israel and Iran, and why I say this has probably got more to do with Iran than it has to do with Donald Trump. It's got to do with Bahrain and Israel and their mutual interest in containing Iranian influence in the region. So they're working together uh, about this mutual fear of Iranian power and especially Iranian nuclear weapons power, which is probably going to happen sooner rather than later, thanks in large part to the efforts of Donald Trump. When Donald Trump scrapped the Iran nuclear deal, he essentially took away the only thing that the United States and the international community really had that was doing any real, that was actually taking any real steps toward preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. The sanctions weren't working. Iran is a very contained, self-contained society, self-sufficient society. You can cut off their borders. Most of what they need, they can produce themselves. They have mountains. They have plenty of fresh water. They have access to. They have plenty of farmland. They have minerals they can mine. They have their own oil. It's not a country that you can squeeze off and starve. And when you have these radical Islamist mullahs in power and a fascist regime, you they're willing to make their people suffer before they're going to have their religious and political power threatened. So, if they're pursuing nuclear weapons, the nuclear weapons aren't going to really be stopped by sanctions. They're going to be stopped by inspections. So, it's very important that the UN inspectors are going into Iran right now and looking at that. But Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, none of these countries want Iran to get nuclear weapons, and they're more afraid of an Iranian nuclear armed uh, country than they are of Israel's nuclear weapons because they're more afraid that Iran would use them against them. Um, and Saudi Arabia is so afraid of it that Saudi Arabia doesn't have nuclear weapons, and they're not saying they're planning on getting them. But they've specifically, overtly said in to numerous news publications and to numerous politicians around the world that the day that Iran gets nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia will purchase them from Pakistan. So, in other words, these Arab countries like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, they're more afraid of Iran than they are of Israel. Israel is primarily something they use to distract from their own crimes against their own people. It's primarily uh, look what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and then they don't really do anything for the Palestinians. The Palestinians are an issue they use to distract from their own crimes against their own people. And they're more concerned with that stupid Al-Aqsa mosque than they are with a single Palestinian child. And this has long been the case. It's just the religion is used to prop up royal families who are nothing but nepotistic parasites who are exploiting their people. And they use the religion to keep the people down so that their family can continue to be on top of the heap, even though they haven't done anything to deserve it. So Bahrain has had, as you know, hopefully, the viewers of this video are not ignorant to these facts. Bahrain has had huge uprisings by its Shia majority, especially since 2011. And these have been backed by Iran, which wants to have more Shia majority countries in its region. They've succeeded in having the rulers of Iran move in more the Shia direction. I mean, Iraq move in more the Shia direction because Iraq is a Shia majority country that was ruled by a Sunni minority for decades. And they want the same thing in Bahrain. And of course, I want to see a secular government in every single one of these countries, including Israel, where they actually have Sharia courts, for those who don't know. 25% of the population, or 29% of the population in Israel are Sunni Muslims of Palestinian background. And so in Israel, you don't have secular courts. For family law, for criminal matters, yes, but for family law, you have religious courts. You have Jewish, Christian, Sunni Muslim, Druze, and Baha'i courts in Israel. Similar situation with Lebanon. But anyway, all these countries, of course, the solution to all this religious form of oppression, theocracy, is secularism, laicite, so on. But so the bottom line is, the reason that Bahrain and Israel are close to each other is because they share intelligence, because they share similar economic interests and similar security interests in the region, and similar threats to their power. The reason that it was kept kind of quiet, that these Gulf Arab countries were so close to Israel, was simply the Palestinian issue, and the fact that that's something that their populations are very passionate about for both secular and religious reasons, and have a sympathy with the Palestinian people and how they've been mistreated by Israel. But the reason that it's coming to this point is probably got very little to do with Donald Trump. He just gave them a neutral place to meet in Washington, D.C., but it's probably got a lot more to do with the fact that Donald Trump scrapped Obama's nuclear weapons deal, and now the nuclear plants that had 0 centrifuges now have over 1,000 centrifuges, and this is why UN weapons inspectors are going to Iran. But Iran is no longer under any obligation with that nuclear deal that Obama drafted, in which the right-wingers falsely portrayed that Obama gave Iran money. Basically what they did is unfroze money that in Iranian foreign bank accounts. It was already Iran's money. It's actually the Iranian people's money, not the Iranian regime's money. Just like if U.S. taxpayers pay money, it's their money, not the government's money per se. So the Iranian people are not the ones who are in favor of this. The latest polls are showing that it's only about 40% of Iranians that even consider themselves to be religious. So that Islamic Republic in Iran does not represent the Iranian people. It needs to be overthrown. It needs to be removed from power, just like all these monarchs in the Gulf Arab countries need to be overthrown and replaced with liberal democracies. Just like in Israel, we need to get the liberal parties in power that favor doing right by the Palestinians and coming to some sort of a fair resolution where the Israelis and Palestinians are treated as equal people, whether it's a one-state or two-state solution. But Trump's going to try to make himself out to be some sort of a peacemaker here. And it's just more of his gaslighting and bullshit. So don't buy it.